With Donald Trump retaking the White House and Republicans taking control of the Senate, Americans now waiting to see which party will control the House of Representatives. A win for Democrats will provide a check on Trump's power. Here to discuss are the hosts of Yahoo Finance's Capital Gains podcast, Rachelle Akuffo, Ben Werschkul, and Rick Newman. And Ben, here, broad strokes, what can we expect from the more than 50 uncalled House seats as of right now?
Yeah, so the magic number everyone should remember is 218. So that's the control. And right now, I'll just have the numbers: 180 seats Democrats have won, 198 for Republicans. So it seems like Republicans have an advantage, but there are a lot of West Coast races that still haven't been called, and they're pretty safe seats. So it's going to be close. I think the bottom line for folks is, as I read in a note this morning, it's going to be a majority of 5 seats or less, probably in either direction. So it's going to be close one way or another, and we may not know it for days. It'll probably tighten in the coming hours, and then it could be days before we know whether we have this check, as you mentioned.
And we were trying to have a look at some of the seats that could potentially still be flipped here. It is still a very tight race. And as Ben said, we probably aren't going to know the exact details for a number of days. But a lot of people are wondering what this means for the balance of power. Of course, we want to bring in the fact that obviously President Biden, still our current president, still has some days left before Trump comes in. But in a lame duck Congress and with essentially a lame duck president, what can Biden really get done, Rick?
I don't think he can get much done with Congress at all, because it remains a split Congress until, so the new Congress will come in early January. That is before Biden actually leaves on January 20th. So there is this one issue hanging out there, which is this suspension of the debt ceiling that Congress passed last year as part of that budget smackdown. That disappears in early January. So the debt ceiling is once again in effect. So Congress doesn't have to deal with that right away. They're going to have several months while we get in. But we're going to be in one of these irritating periods of extraordinary measures, and then here we go down. Are we going to go down to the wire again? Days before we're about to default on the U.S. debt. I mean, this is one of the most tiresome exercises, and we may be about to go through this again. There are some things Biden could do without Congress, though. Some sort of executive action from some foreign policy things. One of the things I'm watching for is, does Biden do anything to tighten up on sanctions on Iran that already exist? Biden has basically been pretty soft on those sanctions, I think because he wants Iranian oil to keep coming on the market, to keep oil and gasoline prices down, to help Kamala Harris get elected. Well, she's not going to get elected. She lost, so he doesn't have to worry about that anymore. There are also things Biden could do to tighten up sanctions on Russia and their oil sales, which, of course, are helping them fund the war in Ukraine. Is he going to change any of this? I don't know, but those are some things to watch for.
The economy seemed like it was one of the largest issues for voters who went in favor of former President Trump in this election here. What does the day one look like for President Trump to speak to those voters?
Yeah, I mean, Harris did cut into Trump's lead in some sense on the economy, but again, the prices was the issue. It's been two years since inflation peaked, and that is what voters tell you over and over and over again they care about. What's interesting about Trump on day one, as you mentioned, is that a lot of his policies could actually increase inflation. Could increase inflation. Tariffs, that brings up prices. Mass deportations, as he's promising, could bring up could discombobulate the labor market. So it's a real open question of whether he delivers on these prices that voters clearly care about.
You know what? I'm not sure that this really came down to the economy in the end.
No.
Because voters, to the extent they're paying attention to these policies, Trump's tariffs have gotten a ton of attention. Everybody who covers this, us and everybody else, has been saying tariffs add to costs. They push prices up. They are inflationary. People voted for Trump. They knew that, or they should have known that, and that didn't sway them really. I'm going to keep saying this. I think the unstated factor in this election is that there weren't enough Americans willing to vote for a black woman. That is not going to exactly come out in the exit polls. But if you read between the lines, you can see this huge shift among Latino men away from the Democrat toward the Republican. In other words, away from the woman candidate toward the male candidate. I think that's good, one of the hugest takeaways. I just don't know how clear that's going to become.
And we know that obviously immigration was an issue that Trump kept hammering home, even though he was the reason they didn't get the bipartisan legislation through. But it's interesting when you look at some of the economic damage, if these mass deportations do in fact come to fruition. It's something that has been tried before, and it doesn't end up bringing back more jobs. Right. It doesn't end up increasing wages. But for some reason, the Democrats either couldn't connect the dots in that message, and people, it's a very vitriolic issue that people have there.
You guys have a lot of work here today, as we all do here at Yahoo Finance, continuing to bring some of the updates throughout the trading session to our viewers here. Our capital gains team joining me here on set. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Brad.
Absolutely.